Hello everyone, Broheen here from the Gamers Emporium channel, bringing you a little update to my Chloromancer guide. Now, the old way that I had posted about a month ago was the way I'd been doing Chloro for so long, and it's worked really well up until 3.0. So I still released the guide, so some people had seen a little bit of the changes with the masteries, but this guide is going to fulfill the rest of what needs to be updated. So, and the way I came across this guide was a guildmate came up to me and said, hey, go check out the spec, it's on the forums, and there's a couple videos with it. I'll mention the credit later in the video, but so I went and checked out this video of it, and the way that this person had been using Chloromancer was very intimidating, but I assure you, if you can get this down and get the muscle memory programmed in your brain, your healing will increase tenfold with Chloromancer, and you'll be able to do a lot of these dungeons such as Empyrean Core or Iron Tomb or Glacial Maw. Trust me, I used to not be able to heal these. Now I can solo heal them for the most part, given the fact that I have a good tank. Really good tank, I should say. A lot of tanks are good, but you have a really good tank and you'll be able to Chloro heal. So let's take a look at the guide and I'll tell you what you're getting into. Okay, so this is what you're getting into. This is the spec for the new Chloromancer. Is 61 Chloromancer, 5 Harbinger, 10 Stormcaller. It's a little bit different than what it used to be. So the 61 Chloromancer, as usual, fill it up all the way to the top. We'll go over abilities later. The 5 Harbinger, the 5 points go into Eldritch Knowledge, and the 10 points in Stormcaller go into 5 in Storm Energy, 4 in Cyclogenesis, and 1 in Living Storm. Your masteries, your level 61 masteries, Bulwark of Souls, 62 is Healing Expertise, Mental Sinecure is your 63, Calculated Annihilation is your level 64, and Phantom Stream is your level 65. Let's take a look at any macros that I have, and then we'll break into the next segment. So, first things first, Void Life. I still use the normal Void Life macro that I've always used. It's Void Life with suppressmacrofailures, a stopcasting function for Vile Spores, just in case, and cast Void Life. Now you don't really need Vile Spores here, but that's the way I had it typed out, but you can just use stopcasting by itself and it'll do the same thing. So, now the next macro is my Nature's Touch macro. This macro is Show Nature's Touch, suppress macrofailures with a stopcasting function as well, and cast Nature's Touch. Then we have a somewhat movement spam macro. So this was part of what my original spam was, except we took Vile Spores out, and we don't use Arcane Manipulation in this one. So I'm actually going to take that out of there. We use Phantom Stream instead as an additional cooldown. So this one goes Show Corrosive Spores, suppress macrofailures, cast Corrosive Spores, cast Ruin, cast Withering Vine. Now it's up to you. Corrosive Spores and Ruin both gain a huge heal from the Synthesis and Life-Giving Veil. So you can switch the two of them around. You can put Ruin first if you like, Corrosive Spores second. It's up to you. I use Corrosive Spores first because it ticks, and that way you get the initial healing right off the get-go, and then the healing continues because it creates a hot or a dot on the enemy, so to speak. So, and then Withering Vine, you cast Withering Vine, and it just was brought to my attention, I didn't realize this, that with Withering Vine, if you cast it, it becomes a hot, and then if you cast it again, it gets the initial tick from the veil, and also ticks from the hot. So it can double tick, so to speak, and be, you know, a big necessity to the spam now. So that's why that's in there. So then we also have a Bloom single target. This is all my mouse over macros. So this is for spot healing only. It's mouse over Bloom, Healing Torrent, and then natural healing. We still have our Radiant Spores macro for pre-pull, so you cast up Radiant Spores, and if you have time before the tank starts taking damage, you can also throw Withering Vine up immediately, but most of the time I find myself just hitting it once and putting up Radiant Spores pre-pull. We also have a big heal macro here, which is mouse over at mouse over Essence Surge. That's your big heal in case you know, the tank's taking a shitload of damage, or anybody for that matter. You restore health equal to 100% of the mage's max health. Now, I'm buffed. I'm at 82.4k. So that's a huge heal. So there's the Uber Cleanse, the single target cleanse. I'm not going to explain this one, but it works. So just copy and paste it in, and you're good to go. I also have your mouse over, Nature's Cleansing, Cleansing Rush. This is my cleanse macro, so anything that this is actually not necessary anymore, so we'll take that out of there. Since we have this one here and this one here, this is your AoE Cleanse, so you just want to have the stop casting function in there so you can get the cleanse off immediately. We have a B-Res. That's pretty much self-explanatory. Mouse over macro so I can get people up faster. Our Wild Growth macro is in here. That's just a raid call to show or to say that Wild Growth is up. And then we have our Synthesis macro, which is a mouse over at Synthesis, so that way I can switch Synthesis targets if I need to, if it's that kind of fight. So that's it for the macros. Now let's take a look at rotation. Okay, so now that we're done with macros, and we can talk about bar arrangement. So basically what I have here is Vile Spores first. I have my Void Life macro second, Nature's Touch third, my Corrosive Spores are main spam. This is my Chloromain spam fourth. Fifth is Bloom, and that Bloom macro for spot healing. Flourish will be your AoE heal. It's a small AoE heal, but it helps, very situational. It's good, keep it on the bar. Your Radiant Spores macro, Big Heal macro, Living Storm, which is also another essential part, but more or less for when you're, you can do it either both AoE or single target healing, depending on the situation. We'll go into that in a moment. Keep my cleanse here. Natural Splendor, I just kind of keep around the bar. Don't use it much, but when you're AoE healing, this is a must. So I'm not going to go too much into this because most of you already know how this works. This is more or less just an update to the actual rotation. So keep Resurgence on the bar. Natural Conversion's a good cooldown when it's used. I keep Ruin up here just to watch. Most of this stuff up here is just situational, or I'm watching cooldowns. I got Break Free, Entropic Veil, keep that on a separate key, something that's really easy to hit, and I'll explain why in a moment. Synthesis, I keep that on a key that's also easy to hit in case I need to switch quick. Wild Growth, your Symbiosis. Symbiosis I didn't cover. Symbiosis you have to put on the tank, or anybody else for that matter, but if it's put on the tank, it's like giving the tank double heals. If you have your Life-Giving Veil up on the tank, or Life-Bound Veil on the tank, and then you put this on somebody else in the raid, they'll both receive heals like they're a tank. If you are using your AoE heals, your Life-Giving Veil, and you put this on somebody, it'll be like your AoE healing plus tank healing the one person. So that's kind of the way I look at it. So done deal. B-Res on the bar, AoE Cleanse, Mana Recovery, Utility for run speed, and then buffs. So let's talk buffs. Living Energy is your first buff. Living Aegis is your second. Lightning Blade's your third. Use a crystal. There's two different crystals now. This one I use for Savon's crystal I have here for when I'm doing single target healing. And then over here next to the Life-Giving Veil, I also have the Mystic's crystal for if I'm going to do AoE healing. So, but for this instance, we're going to use Savon's crystal, and then put on Renewing Seed, Archaic Tablet, Petrified Rune if you have all of them through your planar attunement. So, now rotation. So, there's a couple ways you can do this. I'm going to show you one here, which is the first way that I used to do it. So, what you do, let's take a look at the cast itself. Vile Spores is a 2-second cast, and it hits for a decent amount, does some extra healing. It's a primary bolt, does good healing in general. So, pretty much, you want to time this cast time, so 2 seconds there, if you combine your spam and a Vile Spores. So if you do your Vile Spores and then queue up a spam, you'll actually cast both things. So now Corrosive Spores and Vile Spores both hit. You can do it again, and you'll cast it with a Ruin. It was supposed to go off simultaneously. Do it again, you get a Withering Vine with it. Do it again, you get your Corrosive Spores again. Now Ruin will come off cooldown in just a second here, and I'll show you that. So now Ruin's going to go with it. Two of them at the same time, right? So that's basically what you want it to look like. Now, we're going to back up a little bit. Try to stay maybe about 20 meters is okay for this, for practice. You want to somewhere be around like 15 though, when you get really good at the timing. So now we're going to talk Entropic Veil. Entropic Veil is toggleable, and if you're casting and you use Entropic Veil, like, okay, so for instance, Void Life, and then you use Entropic Veil, it'll cut off your cast. Or it'll queue up next. Now, while you're using Void Life or casting something else, you can turn it off without it interrupting. So that's kind of neat, right? So what you want to do here is, we're going to stand back just so I can show you this. So if you queue up a Vile Spores and your Corrosive Spores, and after it casts, you hit Entropic Veil, and then cast again and turn it off, queue up the other two, and turn it back on before the spell actually hits. This is what generates all the extra heal. And watch my charge bar right here. The charge bar never gets depleted, and you get all this extra heals. Now, this rotation does not use Nature's Touch too much. Now, it does build Boon of Life, so you could potentially get a free Nature's Touch in there, but I find that it's almost wasting the global cooldown in order to do that, and it's not worth it, because the heal together with Vile Spores and a Corrosive Spores, or the heal together with a Vile Spores and a Ruin, actually equals, with the Entropic Veil, actually equals more HPS than one Nature's Touch does with the Veil. So, now just to show you one more time, queue up both abilities before the spells hit, turn on Entropic Veil. While you're queuing them up again, turn it off, turn it back on after they cast. And it's just a timing thing. Do a couple more rotations of this. As long as you turn on your Veil, after the spells are cast, and it stays on until the spell hits, turn it off before you have things casting, you'll gain your charge back, and you'll get the extra heals. So, now the second rotation, which you can use that first rotation, that's more of like the AoE rotation, but you can use it to tank heal. I did it just fine with tank healing, but I almost find it faster and better if you use the Void Life Nature's Touch version of it as well. So what you want to do here is, when you cast your Void Life, you're going to build your stacks of Boon of Life. You can see kind of down here on my new and improved buff bar. So your Boon of Life at 5, right? And then your Nature's Touch becomes free. Now what happens if you go to 1 full Void Life and then half a Void Life? You get 4 stacks of Boon of Life. This makes a Nature's Touch have a cast time, and you can queue up something else while Nature's Touch is casting and use the same rotation. So now I'll do that a little bit faster. And now you can use Entropic Veil to get that extra heal off of Nature's Touch. And it's going to be that much more DPS. And it's going to be that much more HPS. So this is where Chloro healing is going to start to get tough, but it's going to be very, very, very beneficial. So, I can't say that word. It's going to be very beneficial. So, on top of that, any other notes? Pretty much, you know, I use the stuff you know how to do with Chloro already. Obviously, synth the tank. You know, don't do stuff stupid like that. The other thing we didn't talk about was Living Storm. Living Storm is here. It affects one target, so when you cast it, it's gonna deal damage. It's gonna tick on the enemy, and it's also going to deal damage up to 8 enemies within 7 meters of the initial target. So if you think about it, that's 9,600 air damage every second for 16 seconds on 8 enemies, if you have 8 enemies there. And even though it's not a life ability, think about what the tick is going to be on the tank or to the raid if you have that much of a tick of even regular air damage instead of life damage going through the Veil. So it's definitely worth it. So when you have lots of mobs, it's not worth it when you're only fighting like a boss, for instance. But when you're fighting trash, definitely put Living Storm up right away at the beginning, and you'll be all set. So if there's any questions for you guys, please feel free to leave a comment. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, whatnot. You know the drill. This video gets credit. I give credit to this video by Do. He's the video that I saw on YouTube that my guildmate pointed me to, and I learned the spec through that. So thanks a lot, Do. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right, but I see you on the forums everywhere, so I hope it's all good. Anyways, so that's all I got for you guys. Good luck chloro healing with the new update, and I'm sorry this has been a little long and drawn out, but it needed to be talked about. So thanks a lot for watching.